Hey guys, this is Adam from Small Cap Investor, and I'm here with Brent Tolmie, who is from Genesis AI Corp. Genesis is a recent pick of ours. They are in the artificial intelligence space, and I'm here with Brent to talk about the company as well as the recent acquisition and plans for the future. So Brent, seems like you have a ton of experience in forestry, energy, and construction. Just want to hear a bit more about your background before we get into the meat and potatoes.
Sure. Thanks for having me today, Adam. Look forward to speaking to your investors. As you said, I'm Brent Tolmie. I'm fourth generation in the woods. So grew up in a forestry family, diversified along the way into renewable energy, heavy civil construction, just where I saw an opportunity to perhaps look at different solutions that benefit the planet. Big fan of commercial forestry, if it's practiced sustainably, as well as renewable energy and things of that nature.
Amazing. And so how did this all kind of lead up into, before it was Genesis AI, it was Carbon.
Yeah, so Carbon Ethic carries on, but we were developing a piece of technology focused on this digital twin aspect. And along the way, you realize you have lightning in a bottle, and perhaps it would benefit from being stripped out and set on its own to develop. So being friendly with Devron Hawa, he mentioned that he was looking for potential deal opportunities in the natural resource sector and potentially with AI. I introduced him to our technology and we struck a deal. So I've joined the Genesis team to continue guiding the product development.
So can you tell us a bit more about Genesis AI and the whole mission? There's obviously, this amazing software that can create a digital twin of the forest and kind of manipulate it and test different things in real time. So can you just kind of provide a bit of detail on how this software is being created, and also what is the overarching mission? I know, there's a lot of aspects of sustainability and really, maybe saving lives due, obviously the fires in Kelowna. So just tell us a bit about the overarching mission and the software itself.
Sure. So I think everybody's getting familiar with generative AI. Perhaps you've downloaded or tried ChatGPT or Google's Bard. Perhaps you're making pictures on Midjourney. We saw an opportunity to take the digital twin aspect that we developed under the Carbon Ethic brand and now Genesis AI, and actually apply that to real-world problems. So how do we disrupt mining technology? How do we perhaps deploy capital differently and more efficiently so that investors can have a higher rate of return, things of that nature? And how do we take an engine that we developed for trees, so I love your background, it's fantastic, and actually know what's there and these different conditions, taking that into a digital environment and then being able to manipulate it, to model it, to throw threats at it, and to decide where we can more efficiently deploy resources to benefit all people. And so that's really been the mission of disrupting natural resource sector through digital technology.
That's incredible. And, there's obviously a much needed, a huge need for this. And can you kind of just give us a brief example of exactly how this might work? How would it help with mitigating wildfires? Just kind of an example.
Sure. So we all know about Kelowna, as well as the Northwest Territories, the evacuation of the whole city of Yellowknife, 17 million hectares of forest lost across Canada, billions of dollars in damages, as well as, Adam, you referenced the loss of lives. So 3 that I know of, a couple of firefighters and a helicopter pilot perished this year addressing wildfires in Canada. So a real world solution is taking digital technology and saying, okay, we have a limited amount of resources. Everybody's faced with higher taxes, inflation, things of that nature. There's less money to go around. So how do we take that money and ensure that cities have that work where they interface with the forest done? So the commercial brushing, the thinning, and be able to model out the fire risk to perhaps a city, to a commercial forest, so that we can avoid that smoke hanging over the Okanagan all summer. So it's putting dollars to work in doing the things we need to do in the forest to make them more resilient to fire. It's also education. Half of fires these days are still human caused. So having some resilience built around that, if we perhaps commercially thin and build resilience on either side of a highway, can we prevent that from going into a city? And being able to model out not only where the best bang for our buck is spent, but also what that work would look like and where it's most applicable.
Got it. Wow, that's an incredible software. leading into that, is this software already built completely, or is there still kind of tweaks that we need to make to get it where we want it to be?
Yeah, so building SaaS, software as a service products, obviously with a solution and a client in mind, we're always iterating. So we think about our iOS or Android devices. What are we on? Release 150 of the iOS since 2007. So we're constantly refining, addressing new issues. So we're always going through that. But the way we work is we acquire big data sets and then we train them with what we know. So for instance, in the natural resource or a mining sector, if mines have been successful finding something, we take that information that they've developed and we weigh that against other factors that we know. So we aggregate big data and then we weigh it against what they've found and what they know and try to delineate areas of interest, zones of opportunity, heat mapping, if you will, so that we can more efficiently deploy those dollars. So we're constantly facing problems such as data aggregation, getting new sources of data, and applying it to different sectors in natural resources, not just trees, but beyond.
No, got it. I mean, initially when I called into the story, I thought the main focus was just on wildfire prevention, but it seems like there's a lot of, with this software, there's a lot of different applications that can be used. Like you said, natural resources. I think there was some discussion about an urban planning module. Is there anything else we can see this being applied to?
Yeah, so the carbon industry is obviously where we started, and the problem obviously with carbon offsets is that they're full of waste, fraud, and abuse, and we've been trying to disrupt that by saying, well, look, if you're investing in these projects, you should know the work that's being done. You should be able to see that in a demonstrable factor, whether that's through an app to say, this is the forest I invested in improving, or some other piece of technology to put that in the hands of the consumer, the hands of the company who's presenting to their shareholders that, hey, we bought into this project because it does sequester greenhouse gas, because it actually does relate to jobs for Indigenous communities, things of that nature. So to take it out of the sort of the documented theoretical and put it into actual technology that people can sort of touch, taste, and feel. And the advantage of having things in a digital environment is then you have the ability to start to play with it. So just about everything that's developed these days is built in a digital environment, whether it's a car or a device, so that we can model virtually what happens to it when we drop it. If it's a new car, what happens to it if we crash it into a wall? What are those theoretical sensors testing us? So do we have to adjust our design? And it's the same thing for natural resources. Once we have it in that digital environment, then we can really model risk, see where the dollars we have to spend can have the most impact, and help cities obviously manage their biological assets, heat mapping, less energy consumption, and all those great things that go in as a result of being able to model in a digital environment.
AI is really revolutionizing the world, and it seems like you guys are right at the forefront of this. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of other companies doing this, despite, you would think there are, but I guess it's still so early on for AI.
It is, yeah. And I think the big change is the cost of compute. A few years ago, to run these types of complex models used to cost just an absolute pile of money. You had to be very, very wealthy to run any type of model. And if you think about it as an example with technology developing, the computers that put a man on the moon in the 60s and 70s was the size of a building. And now we have more compute power on our iPhone. And so technology moves, and we're able to leverage that to build bigger training models, to run more complex calculations. And then, of course, with generative AI, being able to construct complex sort of quadratic equations to perform even more analysis before the beginning analysis was even completed. And that allows us to really fast forward the process. Instead of running in sequence, now we're running multiple equations in parallel.
Yeah, so that makes sense. It's just nowadays it's much more reasonable and the economics make sense, whereas before it's just, we didn't have the computing power to do these things.
Yeah, and a great example is, how NVIDIA shot up in price because they're running everything on graphical computational units, GPUs, as opposed to CPUs, and that's why they're doing so well, because they're built for AI, and we have access to that technology now to run our models at relatively low cost.
Oh, that's amazing. And I guess next question would be about the commercialization. It's one thing to develop it and say we're going to do this, but at the end of the day, getting a software to commercialization is, how do you plan to do that?
Yeah, so we are already negotiating our first contract It's in the mining sector, and so we're pretty pleased about that. And we're focused on delivering quick wins to that customer, the digitization of their data, getting that into a big data environment so we can start to model the outcomes they're looking for, heat mapping and such, looking for areas of opportunity. In forestry, we're modeling, and what we do as a SaaS company is we focus a lot on customer discovery. So we don't develop in a vacuum, but we interact with various people that we want to acquire as clients and say, hey, what have you heard about AI? How can we apply solutions that you've been fighting with, the use of big data? So we're getting to a commercializable point already in our journey, and that's what we intend to keep on doing. So there's 5 different products, 5 different product lines that we're focused on. Obviously, a lot of things focus around a digital twin of a forest, the carbon module with the wildfire module, with the urban interface module, with the commercial forestry application. But mining is not dissimilar. So a lot of the engineering and the database infrastructure we build applies to all clients.
So there's some overlap there.
Absolutely.
And you guys, are you developing all of these modules simultaneously, or are you prioritizing any specific ones?
We've got a mining customer, so mining's on the top of the barrel, as well as forest carbon, because we've had some inquiries as to, hey, how can you provide trust transparency in this marketplace? And is there a product that we're interested in what you're developing? Could that work for our company so that we can make recommendations in the carbon market, which, as you know, is very nascent. It's kind of the Wild West. And so we're trying to bring some discipline so that investors can benefit and on that trend and feel good about what their money's going into.
Yeah. So whole accountability is the word that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
So this is all great, but with AI, there's obviously going to be some challenges and hurdles, and I assume with Genesis, there will be too. But what are these hurdles that you could foresee already, and how do you plan to navigate them? And and AI there's a lot of good, but there's also some potential negatives that come with it.
Yeah.
How do you plan to navigate the ecosystem?
It's true. There's a lot of white noise in the AI space. People are building plugins to ChatGPT, and they're calling that a product. And in some cases, it is. We were focused on bringing machine learning AI solutions to forestry back in 2020. So this isn't our first foray into the marketplace. And we've already reached productization really for the carbon module with some fine tuning. So the challenges are always acquisition of data, obviously competing in the marketplace and today's world finance. We feel confident with people like yourselves looking at us. That's a helpful scenario. But there are always challenges: data acquisition, talent acquisition, which we think we have a good handle on through our CTO, Jeff Fox, who's an industry veteran. So we're not starting with an idea or a concept, but we're actually starting with a fully fledged SaaS team that knows what they're doing.
Okay.
And that helps us to overcome a lot of these challenges.
Got it. That makes sense. And I guess one other kind of potential issue that may arise would be data privacy and the ethical use of AI, given, the overarching mission for Genesis. I assume this is something you guys already have addressed or plan to address.
Yeah, data privacy is paramount when a client has gone to the trouble to acquire what is proprietary to their business. We're very protective of it. In terms of IT infrastructure and architecture, we already work with our specialist in the IT world is familiar with segmentation of data and partitioning that off and keeping it private. We work with top-tier providers like Microsoft and AWS who are constantly iterating their models to ensure that there is no data mining or hacking. And of course, we don't sell our data that's acquired from other customers to other people. Your data is your data.
Got it. And so you mentioned a mining company as one of the customers you have potentially lined up. Do you plan to also have any kind of government contracts down the road? Do you think that's a possibility?
Absolutely. We're working early discussions with Indigenous clients who are practicing self-government, trying to understand their assets that they have potentially in the unceded traditional territory world. As well as Wildfire really suits to working with government because they're in charge with our safety. And urban forestry, we want to talk to City of Vancouver, North Vancouver, and start to map out those assets so that they can better deploy the scarce resources they have. Mm-hmm. So natural customers as well as insurance companies. So if you're trying to figure out what is acceptable risk, we can help actually define that, so that you're not just turning down insurance contracts or opportunities, but that you're making a strategic decision based on real intelligence.
Yeah, got it. I never thought about the insurance companies being an end use, but that definitely makes sense now. So it sounds like you got a lot of exciting stuff coming up here. Can you share any, I guess you mentioned the potential mining contract, any other kind of milestones or plans for the future that we can be looking forward to over the next couple of months and then beyond that?
Yeah, absolutely. The great thing about software as a service, SaaS products, is that we generally have monthly releases. These are early days, so we're just standing up a team, but we expect in November we'll release a version 1.0 of the mining software, and we'll want to get that out in a demo format so other clients can understand what we're building.
In November?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very soon.
We move fast. So there's an opportunity here, and we want to be sensitive to that. And we know that with generative AI, there are other people thinking about solving the problems that we're working on. So we know there's a first mover advantage.
Yeah.
That's one of the other advantages of this team that we stood up, because we have virtually a 24-hour development cycle starting to happen. And now that we're about a dozen, plus some of the commercial team, a dozen on the developer team, we're able to crank out a lot of work product very quickly.
Awesome. So I saw recently you guys announced a news release with a company in India, a SaaS company that's going to be helping to develop the software.
Yes. Yeah. So we're a big fan of Empower in India. They understand data privacy. At Carbon Ethic, we worked with them in the past. Jeff, our CTO, Jeff Fox, has used a variety of India contractors in the past. And what that represents is inexpensive but extremely expert talent. And they really understand working with startups and how to build things fast. So average discount, we're working off of about 70% of the cost of North America.
Yeah.
And excellent people. We're getting full stack developers with master's degrees who have 7 to 10 years of experience. That's not to say that we don't participate in our Canadian market, because obviously we want to build resilience and jobs at home.
Yeah.
And that's why we're participating with UBC and the co-op students. So we've got 2 great students we've onboarded. We're accessing the MyTax program to bring on 2 PhD candidate data scientists from UBC, as well as other talent locally. So it just gives us the ability, because when we're going to bed and finishing our work day in British Columbia, India's just starting. And so you wake up to work product, they wake up to work product, and things go quickly.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's why you can get this done so quickly then.
That's the goal.
People around the clock. Well, that's awesome. And I guess the final question would just be about the long-term, the company's long-term vision for the role of AI in addressing global challenges. Obviously, there's fire mitigation, prevention, monitoring, but just the overarching goal for Genesis AI.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Strategically, we'd like to be $1 billion geospatial analytics company, applying real data solutions to problems, so disrupting and helping to smooth out the mining process. Again, just deploying the limited capital that people have in a more efficient way, learning from all the greats that have had finds in different areas and taking that information and building models around it, disrupting wildfire. Obviously, if we can apply scarce dollars, every community's fighting for dollars to prevent wildfires in their community, having the analytic tools to actually say, this is where the dollars should be spent, where it'll be most efficient in terms of protection. And then understanding where we can actually get trees back in the ground the quickest. The federal 2 billion tree program is great and it's lofty, but we probably lost 25 billion trees this year due to the wildfire cycle. So where can we get trees back in the ground quickly so they can pack on carbon, clean the air, and we can all benefit from that as Canadians?
Yeah, it's amazing what you guys are trying to do and accomplish. And, I wish you guys all the best. And
Thank you.
I hope as an investor myself, this turns out to be very successful. I understand and I see the vision. There's definitely a need for this software. There's so many applications, and I think there's a very bright future ahead for you guys.
I appreciate that.
So that's it. Thank you very much, Brent, for taking the time to join us here.
Thanks for your time today.
Thanks for watching.